So today is the first session of the 7 series technical trainings. Today we're going to talk about some of the general functionality on the dashboard, which we're looking at right now. And then we're going to mostly focus over here on the 4 key functions. Every session is going to build on the next session. So as we go through the 7 series, we'll be comprehensively covering every aspect of Touchstone. I'm going to be talking about technically how to do things, but then I'm also going to be talking about strategically what to be thinking about, some best practices, why you would do things one way or another. All right, so let's get started. This is called the Touchstone Dashboard, and this is what you and everyone who has access to your Touchstone account, your employees, will see when they first log in. In this section called the control panel right here, it should show the position that you fill in the company. If you're an employee who's in this session now, this should be the name of the position that you fill. If you're a manager, you're going to see this section down here called Management Review, and you should see the positions of your employees or the people who you manage, and then their names should be listed here. All of this is accomplished over here on the right-hand side in what we call account administration. So I'm clicking here to this user guide section, and right here is where users are set up using this toolbar item right here. And then control panels are assigned right here. When you assign a control panel, you're assigning a control panel for the position that this person over here fills. So this is why I have this position called Manager of Admin Finance. Because I'm a manager, I've been given a managerial assignment, and I know that because it shows up in red right here. So it's a managerial assignment. And what that means is that whoever has a control panel for the positions underneath me right here, they will then show up on my dashboard. There's going to be a whole session on account administration and how to use it. There's also these little help guides right here that are useful. It's very easy to go through and use. So if you are looking at your dashboard, or you have, and it's blank, so there's no control panel assigned here, there's no management review, and you're a manager, then attempt to go and set it up just by assigning a control panel over here through account administration. If you're a manager or an employee and you don't have access to account administration, I would encourage you to go to your manager and say, hey, we're learning about this functionality, can you set it up? The purpose of the control panel and management review, and the whole dashboard for that matter, is the using of the processes. So once a process is documented in Touchstone, it should be implemented, which means employees are trained in it, whether it's just a reminder of how they do things or it's a complete new way to do something. They need to be trained in it. And then it's implemented. Implementation to me means that the employees, the people who do that work, know how it's supposed to be done, and they're held accountable to it. That's implementation. So who holds the employee accountable? Well, their manager does. Accountability doesn't necessarily mean that you're cracking the whip on people. Accountability is this understanding between you and your employee, you and your manager, that it's very clear to you how that work is supposed to be done. You have been given that gift, you might say, of clarity on what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to be doing it, and you agree to do it, and then the work gets done effectively. That's accountability. So Touchstone, the dashboard in Touchstone is all about that. It's about the implementing of the processes and the managing of them. The last session of this training series is going to be on the dashboard functionality, specifically the control panel management review, where I'll talk more about this idea of managing processes and accountability. As we go through each of the sessions, I am going to be looping back to the dashboard here and kind of showing you the functionality that occurs here as it relates to the topics that we're going through. Over here in the right-hand side of the screen, there's a button here called Resource Center. And if I click on this, it's always going to open in a second window. That's important to know. My Touchstone account is still open over here, but the Resource Center is now open here. So this is a help desk. We've got a user guide section here that has like a step-by-step for everything. I was told recently that there's some images missing in the user guide, which sometimes happens in WordPress when they do releases and then our images disappear. So we're going to fix that. I've seen a few, it's not very many, but if you've noticed that, then that is going to get fixed. There's a section here called webinars that have the training series from last time, as well as some other strategy webinars. There's a video section that has like how-to videos. Our knowledge library here has what are past articles from our blog, newsletters, if you're interested in that. Contact support right here can be accessed here or here. This is where you can go to send us a feature request, which is like something you'd like Touchstone to do that it doesn't currently do. Also, if you find a bug or something you think isn't working correctly, this is a good place to report it. But most importantly, this is a good place to come when you need help. So if you are confused about what to do, if you've done something in Touchstone and you're not sure it's right, if you want to try to implement or move forward in a certain way and you don't know what to do, if you just have a simple question about how do I document this kind of process, and also training of your employees and your managers, all of that is free. So all you need to do is send in a contact support to us, say, give me a call, I need help with this, and then someone will get back to you. So let's go back over here to Touchstone. There's also a glossary of terms here in the help desk. And so if I'm explaining like what strategic versus tactical is, or what guiding the business means, and you don't remember, go back to the Resource Center here and just search that term, and the definition of it will pop up. Also over here to the right-hand side, this is your logout button. It's always good internet protocol when after you're used any kind of software that's a web tool that you're using, that you log out. It's just a good idea. I'm not saying there's anything dangerous with leaving it open. It's more for your own security. Like if somebody comes up to your desk that, and uses your computer and they can get into your account, anything like that, it's just good to log out. Touchstone will stay active on your desktop for, I think it's 4 hours. So 4 hours with inactivity. So let's say you open it up in the morning and then you go for 4 hours and you don't touch anything in it. The next time you click on something, it's going to close and take you back to the login screen. Again, that's just about internet security. But if you're doing things in it throughout the day, it's always going to stay open. It's not going to shut off. This button here I just showed you is where you go to account administration and account settings, which you'll only see this if you're an admin user. One more thing about logging out. Some people like to open certain parts of Touchstone in multiple windows. So, I could go here and I left clicked on that, and you can see it's opened it in a second window. So I'm here, but then I've also got it open here. This is the top of the screen. If you left click on something instead of right click, I'll do it again. See, it opens it in a second window or a third window now. This is not advisable because if you've got these multiple windows open, it's easy to get confused onto what window you were on. And then what happens, because of the way our system is built, is each window is going to time itself out. And it does that because we don't want overlap between what you've done in this window that's open and what you've done here. We don't want to overwrite the other window. So this is just the way that web tools work. It's going to time out the open window. So if you do want to open things in multiple windows and you're frustrated because maybe you've experienced this timing out of the 2 or 3 windows that are open, go to your web browser and do an incognito window, which is this, and then log into Touchstone through here. And then you can truly have multiple windows open and you won't have any worry about activity you're doing timing something else out. Okay, so incognito, and I think most web browsers have the incognito window. Okay, so we're going to go over here to the left to the 4 key functions. When I click the 4 key functions in the navigation here, it shows me the 4 key functions listed here. And all I have to do to access any of them is just start by clicking one. So I just clicked on guiding the business. So you can see that guiding the business is bolded right here, which lets me know I'm on guiding the business. But a better indicator is to look at the folders. So same 4 that are here are going to be here. It's just another way to view them. So in this arrangement, these are folder views, and whatever folder I'm on, or whatever key function I'm on, it's going to be highlighted like this one is. And then of course, you're going to see the processes in there. So you can toggle back between any of the 4 key functions from the navigation here or from this folder view. The 4 key functions is where all of your processes are listed. We use the term process inside of Touchstone, but it means the same thing as an SOP, a procedure, a system, a step-by-step for how to do something. So a process, all the processes that are in your Touchstone account will be in the 4 key functions in one place or another. It's not possible for a process to exist in Touchstone if it's not on one of the 4 key functions or inside of one of the 4 key functions. The 4 key functions is an outline. And then within each of the 4 key functions or hierarchy, there are processes. Sorry, there are sub-functions like advertising here, and then there are processes. So let me show you this a little different. I'm going to go here to the right and collapse this. So when I collapse this to the collapse view, I see my sub-functions. So the 4 key functions is a hierarchy, the 4 key, these are the 4 key areas of any business, doesn't matter what kind of business it is. And I've never been proven wrong about this. You could try, but any business that I've ever run across has these 4 key functions. Now, if you're primarily a sales-driven organization and you outsource the operations, well, sure, you're doing the business function is a little less than what you're getting the business function would be. But nonetheless, it still exists. So it's like looking at your business from above and then cutting it into 4 parts. Guiding the business is the first part, and guiding the business in our terms means processes that you use to guide your company, usually business strategy type processes. Click here, and management processes. So processes you use to guide your company, the work that happens that guides your company and your people. Then we've got getting the business, which is getting new business in the door. So it's marketing strategy, thinking about what you're going to be doing, advertising, which is the generating of the leads, and then sales or lead conversion, the closing of the leads. So anything related to getting new business in the door. Running the business is, I like to call it the office processes or the support processes. So it's finance, which is all the quantification that needs to go on to spit out reports and tell you how your business is doing. It's HR, like recruiting and hiring and the policy side of management. It's administration, so answering the phone, filing things, everything related to efficient administrative running of your business. And then there's IT, so your computer processes. Doing the business, lastly here, is your operations. So it's the delivering of your products or services. Business comes in over here through sales and marketing and then gets put over here. And everything that you need to do to deliver an excellent product or service to your customers happens here. Within each of, I'm going to go back to getting here. Within each of the 4 key functions, there are sub-functions or sub-areas or categories. I just collapsed my process lists again in this getting the business area. Now you can see the sub-functions that I have here. So I've got advertising, sales, marketing strategy, sales management, estimating. Usually in getting the business, I would see 3 things for sure, 3 sub-functions. Marketing strategy, so the strategic side of marketing, analysis, development, market planning. Then I would see advertising, which is the generating of leads through social media, word of mouth, whatever you do. and then sales, which is the conversion of those leads. If you want a sales management subfunction, fine. You could also put these sales management processes here under sales. If you do estimating and you want to see that separately, the processes related to estimating, then estimating. Now let's go here to running the business. So running the business, I'm just going to collapse this again. We have finance, obviously, that's important. Recruiting and hiring. So interviewing, recruiting, onboarding, human resources, like employee handbook, benefits, financial management, which could be like budgeting, cash flow, the higher level side of the finance processes, IT, information technology. So every computer program in your business, including software and hardware, should be listed here, and there'd be how-tos of using all that computer technology, and then administration. So every business, irregardless of industry, some version of these listed here is what you should have as well. Doing the business, this really depends on what industry you're in, what your sub-functions for doing the business would be. This is a listing of your products or services and how you create them or disseminate them. So client service or customer service is probably a good one. If you produce something, if you're a production company, then there should be production management, or service management. If you have materials and supplies that are warehoused, maybe you have a warehouse sub-function. Material control, if you have like supplies that are inventoried on trucks or vans. If you're a construction company, there might be construction management and labor force or labor processes. So think about what your industry is and then come up with categories that work for your operations or you're doing the business. And then lastly, guiding the business. This one's pretty easy. It's usually, ignore that right down there. It's usually strategy, board of directors, and employee management. This must be some testing that I did. So business strategy, board of directors and meetings, and then employee management. So if you don't like this guiding, getting, running, doing terminology, like it annoys you or you just don't get it, then you can change it. You can go right here where it says edit function title, and then you type in maybe sales and marketing if you want. Whatever terminology you want to use, you can. Just remember that there are only 4 key functions. So I can change this to sales and marketing rather than being guiding the business, getting the business. I can change it just like I did, but I would advise against getting rid of guiding the business and calling this sales, and then changing, getting the business to marketing, and then having running and doing, because you're going to run out of the 4 key functions. So try to stick to the general definition. We don't have 5 functions or 6 functions. There's only 4. So that's edit function title. Once I've changed this, I could easily go here and change it back. Nothing's fixed. To the right of edit function title, this is how you control the sub-functions. So I hit the drop down here called sub-functions. I can go create here and then type in a new sub-function and hit save. And that's how I add a sub-function. I could go here and choose edit. And then I hit the drop down here and I choose the sub-function I want to edit. And then I type in the new name right here. And then I just hit save. And then it changes it. Or I can go here and hit delete if I want to get rid of a sub-function. Hit the drop down here. If you see this, so this sales sub-function has linked processes, I'm clicking on this and it's not letting me click on it. So if you do want to delete a sub-function, then you need to move all the processes out of it until it's empty, and then you can delete it. So what I mean by that is just drag and drop. So I drag this down here. So I'd essentially have to take all of these processes out of this one advertising sub-function or this one until it's empty. And then I can go here to sub-functions and delete it. Otherwise, Touchstone doesn't know where to put the processes. That's why that happens. So anything and everything related to the subfunctions is here, just right under the subfunctions tab. So I gave you some ideas for some typical subfunctions that I might see. By the way, all of that is in the help desk in the resource center in the user guides under subfunctions, the definitions of guiding, getting, doing, running, and then also suggestions if you don't like these, what you might use. So all that's there. What I do want to say about subfunctions is that they're simply there to help you organize your processes. So that's their main purpose. They're there to help you compartmentalize the processes a bit, see them in an outline format. So the more subfunctions, the better, really, because if you can see things better if you see them by subject area. When you're listing processes in the 4 functions and you're coming up with your subfunctions, don't think about people and personalities and your org chart and who does what. Kind of let that all go for this exercise, because the 4 functions exercise, or the 4 functions in general, is more subject driven. It's not people. So you wouldn't want to have a subfunction that says sales manager or marketing expert or marketing assistant. Those are positions. They're people doing work. They're not subjects of work. So think of subjects. The people are going to come in later when we go to the org chart. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners tend to think about people first, because you think people are doing things and this person does that, and I'm going to assign this person that, and I need somebody to do this work, so I'm going to go hire this person. There's a time and a place for that, but sometimes that drives you to be a little bit people dependent, or thinking about the people you have and then letting that allow you to define the work that needs to happen. This is the opposite of that. This is thinking of your business on a big white blank piece of canvas and sketching out the functions of it, the categories of it, the structure of it, not who's going to do what. Another thing about subfunctions is a subfunction should have, I think, at least 3 processes in it in order for it to be valid. So I'm going to open up sales right here. This is what I mean. I've got all these processes listed here under sales. So these are the processes I need for sales, all listed here. If there was only one process that I needed for sales, then sales would not be a valid subfunction. It's really just a process title. If there's 3, then yeah, sure. You have a category, have a subfunction called sales, and then list the 3 processes. If there's 2, so 2 processes that I need to document for sales, well, I mean, I suppose you could do that, but it's kind of like an overuse of the subfunctions, I would say. So allow there to be at least 3. Usually there's going to be plenty more than that. If you're struggling to come up with what the processes are inside of a subfunction, that might be a reason to rethink it and decide, well, maybe I can combine that with another key function or another subfunction, or maybe these are actually process titles and not subfunction titles. Okay, so next to subfunctions is the processes header. So here is how you add processes and how you delete processes. So it only 2 things happen here. So when I click this, I'm going to see create and I'm going to see delete. So I'm in the marketing and sales, or the getting the business function. So when I go processes, create or delete, whatever I'm going to create, whatever I'm going to delete is related to this key function. If I go here to running the business, now I'm in running. And if I go processes, I'm going to create processes that will go into running the business or that I want to delete from running the business. So if you hit create, then you're going to put in the name of your process. I think processes should be titles. They shouldn't be like a sentence or a phrase. It should be a clear, specific title. Usually or always, unless you decide to do it differently, because at the end of the day, this is your system and you can do what you want. But my recommendation would be it's a title. Each letter of every word is capitalized. So it reads like a title. So you type in the name of your process. This is where you choose the subfunction it belongs in. So you choose the subfunction you want to add it to, and then you just hit save. So super easy right here. When you first add a process, it's just a title and there's nothing in it, like no documentation has been created yet. So if I click this, for example, there's nothing here. So this is where you'd go to document the process using these templates. This process hasn't been started yet, so it's red and there's nothing in it. So the red color lets me know it's empty or it's just a title. The minute I go and build something, like if I put a work plan in here, I'm going to keep this simple, and I hit create work plan. Well, now I've started the documentation of this, and I'd go and build the tasks and build up my work plan. If I go back here on the breadcrumb trail, which is the fastest and easiest way to get back to where I was, running the business, then you can see the title of this is turned blue. So blue means there's something in it, like somebody has gotten in there and started to document it. So red, like these down here, there's nothing in those. Blue, something's in it. When I'm finished with it, like I'm finished with the documentation, I select it and I hit this little button here that says mark complete. So now this process title is black. So this color coding, and somebody just asked that question, and that's the answer. Red, nothing in it. Blue means it's in process, somebody's working on it, and then black means it's finished. So we added a process right here. Then we can also go and delete a process. Delete, hit the drop down. Now I'm seeing all the processes that are in running the business in alphabetical order, all of them. So I would go to that process I want to delete. It doesn't matter if it's black or blue or red, I can delete it, and then I hit delete. Only administrators can delete. So if you be careful who you make an administrator to your Touchstone system, because they have that power to delete things. When you go to a process and you delete things within it, like a work plan or a checklist right here, there's a way to restore that manually that I'll show you when we get to this session. But if you delete a process from the 4 key functions like I just did, theoretically it's gone, although it's not, because we have extensive backups of everything and non-destructive delete, so things aren't actually gone. So be mindful of who you make administrators. Ask people to be careful who are administrators what they delete. I feel like it's good protocol to, if you're going to delete a process, to go to that process and just being mindful, delete everything inside of it one at a time. Just be like, okay, I really want this gone. I really want this gone and this gone. When it's empty, then sure, there's nothing in it left that you want. You've made really clear, you've been clear about that. Then you go and delete it right here. If you have an accident, somebody has an accident, send us a message to the help desk and we'll help you out. So processes, there's add and there's delete. To the right of processes is the library. So the library gives you example processes. That's what it's for. So it gives you processes to use to get started, best practices, ideas. Every key function, guiding, getting, running, doing, all have their own library. So processes related to running the business, I'm going to find here in this library. Just like if I'm going to add a process and I'm on running the business, well, it's going to add it to this key function or delete it from. So remember, every function has its own library with processes related to that subject of that key function. If I go here to library, I'm going to go to general library, and I'm going to see a list of all the processes that are available in this library. A fair amount of these are grayed out because I already have them in my system over here. So if you're going to the library and you're noticing processes grayed out, it's because they already exist in your system. And we don't let you duplicate them. But if I scroll down here, these are all in alphabetical order, I'll see these black ones that are available for me to download. And if I fill in this little checkbox here on the side, and then I hit copy, then this process is going to download into my system right here. here in the library, if you can also choose the sub-function you wanted in right up here initially. So you can go through and choose your sub-function like recruiting and hiring, and then take everything related to recruiting and hiring that you want, and then hit copy, because I can tick off these more than one at a time. Then I hit copy, then it'll download everything into this sub-function. If you don't do that, like you've ignored this, or you want to do things more one at a time, you can always move the processes around just by dragging and dropping them. So just pull it up and pull it down and let go. In fact, you can even move sub-functions around by pulling them up and down like this. Remember, you can collapse by going over here to the expand collapse, or I can just click here to collapse that. Click right on the title and it collapses. And then click it again and it'll open it back up again. If you want to move sub-functions around, if I went all the way down here and I took this and I wanted to move human resources to the top and all of its processes, I'm going to have to drag and then scroll and drag and scroll, which can be a little hard if you have a lot of processes. So the best way to really do that is to go to collapse things. And then I could take this and drag it up and down, with no problem. I can do it quickly. You can also take processes and move them from one key function to another. So if I had put cash flow planning here in running the business, but for whatever reason I decide I want it in guiding the business, I just grab it with my mouse and drag it right on top and let go. And now Touchstone's asking me, which sub-function do you want it in inside of guiding the business? So you choose the sub-function and then you hit move process. And then that process is gone from running the business and is now in guiding the business. I got a help call the other day from a user who's like, my processes just disappeared. Like I took them and I was trying to move them and then they just disappeared. Well, things just don't disappear in Touchstone. I mean, never say never, but I've never seen that happen in 15 years. What they had done was they had taken the process and drug it to the key function and wasn't really paying attention. And to them, it was gone because it just disappeared. But it really was in guiding the business or whatever function they had laid it over. So if that does happen to you, if you can't find something, if you're like, where is this that I just saw yesterday, just go to the search here. And here you can type in a partial or full word. You can search all, or you can search specifically for something. For a while, we had some issues with the search for non-admin users, but that's been rectified and the search is now, available for everyone, no matter what type of user you are. So the search is a good way to find things. All right. Just to show you, I know I verbally said it, but I'm going to show you. We're going to go to doing the business now. Doing the business has its own library. We were in running, now we're in doing. So if I go to the library here and I go to the general library, I'm going to see a whole nother list of processes here. Doing the business will have the least amount of processes in the library. And that's because not every business, every industry is the same, right? So every industry, depending on what you do, what kind of business you have, your operations would be different. So to come up with generic processes in doing the business is harder than it is the other key functions. So that's why you're going to see less here. I always tell people when you're working on your 4 key functions, guiding and getting and running are going to be the easiest because you can pull a lot of great stuff from the library. Like within a matter of minutes, you could have, at least a partial list of everything your business needs in these 3 areas. It's here in doing where you're going to spend the most time and do the most work, because this is where you're kind of crafting your own processes. You're coming up with the way that you do it, and it's not generic for every business. So let's talk about how to approach the 4 key functions, like from a strategic point of view. So what I feel like it's really a good idea to build out your 4 key functions first when you start in on Touchstone. So get a big picture view of all the processes. Before you do your org chart, before you go in and start documenting a process, before you do anything really, come up with a master plan, I would call it. And it really is just a list of all your processes. So start with one key function, like guiding the business, or whichever one you want to start with first. I'd say start with guiding, getting or running, since doing will probably be the hardest. Start with one that's easier to you. Sometimes running is the easiest to start with because the administrative and finance processes are more straightforward for people because you understand those more because they're linear and they're usually clear and articulate. There's not some ambiguity in how it's done. It's pretty much done in a uniform way. So when I say, create an invoicing process, well, you could probably do a step-by-step of that pretty easy. But if I was to say, build me a social media process on how to create ads, well, that might be a little harder. Or build me a sales conversion process. It's going to be like, whoa, that's a lot. I need to do it, but it's not as straightforward. So that's just a plug for starting with running the business, because once you put one together, then you can kind of see how it's supposed to look for the others. So go to a key function, build your sub-functions first. So if you haven't done this yet, go and list out your sub-functions. Have them be similar to what I suggested. So finance, human resources, administration, IT, something like that. And then go and start listing processes. You might start by going to the library and pulling down what you want from the library. Then look at what you have and fill in the blanks with what's missing. Start to think about all these activities, these subjects, and what happens, what work needs to happen. You'll probably, get maybe 50% of the way there, meaning maybe 50% of the processes you'll be able to list. And then as you move forward, you can start adding more. Even 20% is good. It doesn't have to be perfect, I guess is my point. Just get down what you see clearly and with help from the library. When you feel satisfied with this one key function, move on to the next. Same thing, go in and do your sub-functions, and then go to the library and pull some stuff down that you like from there that seems like it's going to work for you. And then go in and fill in the blanks, list out the processes you think are missing, and then go to guiding and doing until you've covered all four. You can get help from your teams. If you have departments specifically or particularly with managers, sit down with those people and say, let's talk about the processes that exist for sales and marketing. Let's go through. This is what I have. What do you think? So get feedback from people. You can even send an email out to a certain department and say, everybody make me a list of what you think you do every day, and have them all come up with these lists. And then they send them to you, and then you can comb through them and see if you've missed anything. When you ask people to do that, they usually will write sentences for things. I do this, then I make sure all the customers are billed and that the bills are set out on time and that they are collected within 90 days. Well, that person just listed 3 processes. They do the invoicing, they add the payables to QuickBooks, and then they do the collections. So you're going to have to comb through the narrative sometimes to come up with what the processes are. But getting your people involved is a really great thing to do, particularly in the areas of your business where you don't really know everything that occurs. By doing this, you're also getting your people warmed up to the idea that your processes are going to become important if that hasn't been something that they've been used to seeing. So have the end result being that you've listed everything out in the 4 key functions. So let's talk about process titles and how you list things. So you heard me say that when I'm listing a title, it's usually 3 or 4 words, 2 probably most of the time. Okay, let me say that again. 2 words, maybe 3 or 4, but mostly 2. So public relations, referrals and testimonials, appointment process. This I don't like, process at the end of it, because if you do that, then you're going to have that on every process. It just becomes redundant. So appointment setting maybe would be a better way to say this. So if you do have that, think about correcting it if you've put process at the name of every title. If you look at your process titles, since you've had Touchstone for a while, and they read like sentences or phrases, and they don't read like titles, rearrange that. So if I click on this one, there's this field here called the objective. The objective is the description of what's in the process. It could be a sentence or a phrase. That's where that belongs. It's not the title. So I've seen it opposite, where the sentence is the title, and then there is no objective because you've made it the title. What that does is you have these wraparound titles when you're looking at your 4 key functions. It's not easy to glance through and see what you have because you're having to read everything and kind of digest it to know what it is. So there's many, many great reasons for making these read like titles instead of like sentences or phrases. Try to have the subject first and the adjective or the verb second. So rather, like this is wrong, writing web copy for landing pages. I would have the writing probably doesn't even exist there. It could be landing page web copy. That would be better. Maximizing client retention. I'd have client retention. I probably, and maybe not even have this. The reason that is because if you put the verb or the adjective first, then that's what your eye is seeing first. And if I'm looking for the client retention process, I'm not thinking maximizing, I'm thinking client retention. Even if I search for it, I'm thinking client retention, not maximizing. So clear, short, specific titles. So let's talk about, related to that, let's talk about the difference between the key function, the sub-function, the process, and the work plan or the tools within a process. That's a mouthful. So there's a difference between the key function, the sub-function, which is here, the process, and then the tools within the process, which are all of these. So let's go back here. The hierarchy is the 4 key functions here. We drill down to the sub areas, which are these: financial management, recruiting and hiring, human resources. Then we see the process title, which is new employee interviewing. When we click the process, we then see the content within the process, or we see the tools, we call them tools, that are used to document the process. What makes this a little difficult is that there's not a clear-cut rule for what is a subfunction, what is a process, what is a work plan within a process. It's something that you have to construct. We give you some guidance with the library processes, but even with that, it's not always clear. So I'm going to give you some guidelines to use right now. But having said that, if you're still confused by this and you don't think you did it right, just send us a message and someone will call you and look through it for you and give you some direction. There's nothing you did wrong, and there's an easy way to correct it. So things can be combined and taken apart inside of Touchstone very easily. So we talked about the 4 key functions being the 4 main parts. Then we talked about sub-functions being the categories within that part of the business, so the categories within running. The processes are the work that happens in that category. So budget creation is something that happens within financial management. If I made financial management let's do a different one. If I made recruiting and hiring the process title instead of the sub-function title, then all 4 of these 6 of these processes would be work plans within this process called recruiting and hiring. So if I made recruiting and hiring the process title, all this content you see here would have to be inside of that process. So when I clicked on recruiting and hiring, I would see probably 20 things here, 20 work plans. So to me, that's too much. It's like too much going on inside of one process. First of all, more is not better. I think less is better because it's simpler. This is hard enough to follow stuff like this without overcomplicating it. So if you have that situation where you've perhaps made what should be the sub-function the actual process, then that might be something you want to pull apart and redo. You can see in recruiting and hiring, for example, there is searching for the new employee. There's the interviewing of the new employee. There's the onboarding and orientation. So there's contracts and agreements. So there's all these things that these different workflows, these different results that need to be achieved regarding recruiting and hiring. It might even be that multiple positions in your company do all of these things, which is even more of a reason for making them separate processes. Inside a Touchstone, a process like this is linked to a job description on the org chart, a whole process. You can't go into a process and take a work plan like this one and link that to the job description on the org chart. It's this whole process which is linked. So why that's important to think about is if there are 20 work plans in here done by 5 different positions, I'm linking the whole process to all 5 of their job descriptions. And then furthermore, I'm going to have to go into each of these work plans and delineate who does what. If you don't do it that way, you break things apart and make them separate processes, then you can link each one to the job descriptions on the org chart. So think about the volume that's in each of your processes. So to add even more to this, there is such a thing as not combining enough. So we just talked about taking something like recruiting and hiring and putting all the content inside of one process. So that is an example of too much in one process. But there's also an example of not enough in one process. So not combining things enough. Here's an example of that. So here's finance. I've got all these processes that are related to finance. I've got a process here called accounts payable. When I click accounts payable, I then see all these work plans. There's how to pay bills with check deposits, how to invoice, how to do special invoices, how to pay bills with credit card or ACH payment, how to make check payments. So everything I need to know about how to pay bills is here inside this process. To me, that makes sense. Everything that I need to know about how to do accounts payable is here inside this process. I could have done it the other way and made all of these work plans their own separate processes. So here again, this is an example of maybe not enough inside of a process. So if I had a process called check deposits and another called bank deposits and another called invoices and another called special invoices, then within each of those processes, there was a work plan for each of those things. Now I've taken one process and made 6 processes out of it. So when you look at your 4 key functions, rather than seeing this one accounts payable, I'm seeing 6. Imagine that for every single one of these. So now we're taking something that was maybe 20 processes long and turning it into 80 processes. It just is, it's a lot. And again, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that other than it's just making a lot of processes. So when you have the opportunity, try to combine like results. Don't go as far as just having a process called finance and then having all of these inside of it. Break it apart a little more than that. Accounts payable, finance, financial statement preparation, collections, purchasing. And then within each of those processes, have everything that someone needs to know about how to pay bills or how to collect past due AR or how to do purchasing. Again, if you have questions about this or it's not clear, because it is probably the most challenging thing about the 4 key functions, then let us help you. Let us review what you have and kind of give you some pointers. So that is the gist of the development of the 4 key functions. Every session, I'm going to try to leave at least 10 minutes to talk about a library process. And I'm picking library processes so processes you find here in the process library. I'm picking library processes that I think are really great, that I think are easy to download and kind of use right away, that I think are kind of generic for most industries. And some of them I've done in other sessions, but some of them are new. So this is kind of hopefully a little treat that'll happen at the end of this that will hopefully incentivize you to use some of the processes in the library. Before we do that, I want to say one thing about the library processes. Someone has a question about this, so I'm just going to speak about it for a minute. One thing that happens with the library processes is people will go in to the library and add everything. So you just tick off every single process and click save. And now, boom, you've got, 100 processes in your account. And they're all things that look good to you, but maybe you don't know exactly what they are, or it's not something you've implemented in your business before. So if you download a library process, I would suggest that you look at it. So what I mean by look at it is you click it and you look at the content. You go through every work plan, click it, read this. Okay, examples of financial key performance indicators. That looks pretty good. I like it. Go to the next one. This looks good. Go to the next one. If you look at any of these and you say, I like this idea of financial indicators, but we're not going to really use the client service ones, just delete it. So look at the content of the process, things that you like, keep, things that you are unsure of, or you don't think it's something that you're going to use anytime soon, just delete it. If you look at a whole process and you're not sure about it, you think this is something that might be great, but I'm so busy right now, I can barely even think about working in Touchstone, let alone implementing all these new processes, then delete those processes for now. Go to processes, delete. What happens is the Touchstone will put them back into the library. So they're not gone forever. Even if you delete a tool inside of one of these processes, those can be recovered. They just sit over here in the trash. So anything you delete from here sits over here in the deleted folder. So get rid of these library processes that don't feel like a priority. You can always go and download them later. The very last thing you want is to clutter up your account with a bunch of processes that you're really not using or doing anything with. So if this exists for you right now and you know what I'm saying is true, I would suggest just go in and spend 10, 15 minutes and just get rid of the things. If it's not something that you're going to implement and use in the next 6 months, say, get rid of it for now. You can always go back and get it later. So right here in doing the business, there are some processes. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3 processes here that I think are absolutely essential for any business. One is reputation monitoring, customer complaints, which is kind of the same thing, and customer satisfaction, which is kind of the same thing. Reputation monitoring is your presence on the internet. I think there's rarely any businesses out there that don't benefit from the internet. And more, when customers are complaining or even saying something nice about you, that's being posted on the internet. So you can, through this reputation monitoring, you can see complaints about you. You can also see things people are saying great about you. What I'm suggesting is that you get proactive about it. So with reputation monitoring, this library process has got some suggestions on software, free software that you can set up to do automated monitoring, how you would manage your reputation just by having a person assigned to this who would go through, look through the different sites where people could potentially post things good and bad about you. Go through guidelines on, this is a list of the monitoring software. Let's click on this. So these are just ideas that we have, some that are free, some that are not. Then there's some tools down here called guidelines for customer interactions on social media sites. So this is all content that would help the person who's going to be in charge of reviewing what's being said about you on the internet and then responding to it, how they would respond, what they would say. The sooner you do it, the better, particularly if somebody said something negative. So we're talking about all the social media sites that we all are aware of. And then also there's like the Better Business Bureau. There are other places, Google reviews, where people can say negative things about you and you may not even think to look there. They can say positive things too, but the idea of this process is to have a system in place where you're looking at it once a week through the reputation monitoring, and then somebody's accountable for responding. And here's some ideas on how and when to respond and what to say. There's also a custom form in here, which helps you do the audit. So do a quick web presence audit on Google, do a Google search your name. So it's just giving you ideas. the person in charge of this can go to the dashboard and pull up this custom form and literally fill it out and save it back to Touchstone. So they're doing this work for you. They're saving evidence that they did it back to Touchstone. You could then run a report at the end of the week and see that it's been done and what's been said and what's been done about it. So reputation monitoring. Along with that, you should have a customer complaints process. So if you see someone has complained about you on social media, or someone calls and directly complains about something you did or something your employees did, have a process where that is dealt with. Go through and have a checklist, there's scripting ideas in here. There's custom forms like this one where it can be where one of your employees can fill out what happened and what was done about it. There's this idea, which I think is a fabulous one, called customer satisfaction guidelines. So this is a series of guidelines that you would implement in your business and teach all your employees. It's like the heart of who you are and how you expect your employees to treat your customers. What are some just absolute rules that you always live by, and they become kind of the guideposts when you're making decisions. One of ours at Business Design Corp that we're constantly, or we're saying often, is we always do the right thing. So when a difficult situation comes up, the first thing a manager will say is, let's do the right thing. What is that? Let's talk about what that is. Doesn't matter about how we feel or what happened. What would we be doing if we were going to do the right thing? So have a customer complaint process so that your customer complaints get handled, thoroughly. And then customer satisfaction. So don't wait. The idea of this process is don't wait until there's a complaint. Just check in with your customers. Don't wait till they go here and complain on the internet, or you have to do this because they've called you. Ask them how it went at the end of every interaction, if you can. If you're in a business where you have long-term projects, this is easy because at the end of it, then you check in with your customers and you say, how did we do? If you have more interactional type sales, it's a little harder, but you can still do it. There's this is inside of the customer satisfaction process, but it's just to provide some motivation for this, because a lot of businesses will say, well, we don't have time for that. I can't check in with every customer. I can't even spot check customers. I'm so busy. Well, these are all reasons why you can't afford not to do that. A customer is 4 times more likely to defect to a competitor if a problem is service related other than price. The probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%. The probability of selling to a new prospect is 5 to 20. Every time a customer complains, there are 26 other unhappy customers. I know this is true because I've experienced this myself. So I'm not going to read all of these, but you can, and it's to provide motivation for doing this. Another huge benefit of having a customer satisfaction process is because then you can start asking for referrals, and you may run across people who are unhappy, but you're going to run across a lot of people who are happy. And then you can say to them, how about a Google review? How about you write us a recommendation? And people are happy to do it. So that's another added benefit. Not only are you going to run into the customers who weren't happy and didn't really care to tell you about it because they were already going to move on, or you might run into customers that are extremely happy. And then the more Google reviews you get, the better SEO you have, the more you're going to come up and search on Google. So think about these 3 processes and what your version of this is: reputation monitoring, customer complaints, customer satisfaction. I'm going to bring these processes up again a little bit later in the next few sessions. And how I'm going to bring them up is oftentimes when a customer is unhappy, there's a solution to that. There's a system solution, a process solution. We're so busy fighting fires most of the time, these problems come up and we just want to snuff them out and go on to the next one. Kill that, go on to the next one. And you don't put in a permanent solution. Touchstones gives you an opportunity for that, because when you run a customer complaint process, you figure out where you went wrong. If you can put a process solution in place, that's not going to happen again. And that's going to save you time and money. Next week, we are going to talk about the organization chart, one of my favorite things of all time. Organization chart, is not just a chart. It's a strategy. It's strategic. It helps your business grow. It helps you remain profitable. It helps you manage better. It is one of the best tools that any business can have. So next week, I'm going to tell you how to use the charts, which is very easy. And most importantly, I'm going to teach you how to use it as a strategy tool and a management tool. That is next week. Thank you all for coming. And if you do want a recording of this session, somebody has asked me for that. I will send that to you once the recording is has downloaded and come together. Anyone else who wants a recording, send us a message through the help desk, or you can email me directly and I'm happy to send that to you. Thanks for coming, everybody.